Good afternoon, everyone. Today's class is on oral hypoglycemic agents. So, before going into details of the oral hypoglycemic agents, what are the types of diabetes mellitus? There are four types, mainly type 1, type 2, gestational diabetes, and maturity onset diabetes in younger. So, among these four, type 2 diabetes mellitus is the most common. So, these oral hypoglycemic agents, also called oral anti-hyperglycemic drugs or oral anti-diabetic drugs, these drugs are mostly preferred in type 2 diabetes mellitus. These are only indicated in type 2 diabetes mellitus but not in type 1 diabetes mellitus. This type 2 diabetes mellitus is also called non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. These drugs lowers the blood glucose levels in type 2 diabetes mellitus. So these drugs are preferred in type 2 diabetes mellitus because there's a drawback of insulin that it should be given by injection. So only oral hypoglycemic drugs are preferred for type 2 diabetes mellitus. Coming to classification, there are mainly 8 groups of drugs. Among these, which enhances insulin secretion are ATP sensitive potassium channel blockers, which are sulfonylureas and meglitinides, and dipeptidyl peptidase 4 inhibitors. These 3 groups of drugs enhances insulin secretion and which overcome insulin resistance. These are biguanides and thiazolidinediones. And next group is which retards carbohydrate absorption, that is glucose absorption, which are alpha glucosidase inhibitors. And other miscellaneous group of drugs include sodium glucose cotransport 2 inhibitor and dopamine D2 receptor agonist. These are the group of drugs. Individual drugs under these groups will be discussed in subsequent slides. Coming to the first group of drugs, that are sulfonylureas, which enhance the insulin secretion from pancreatic beta cells. These are mostly first generation and second generation drugs. First generation drugs are almost all are discontinued due to various severe side effects of these drugs. Among these, tolbutamide is infrequently used. All others, glibenclamide, glipizide, gliclazide, and glimepiride, are second generation sulfonylureas. So, second generation sulfonylureas are most commonly used drugs for type 2 diabetes mellitus. Coming to the mechanism of action of these drugs enhances the release of insulin by acting on sulfonylurea receptors, which is a subunit of ATP sensitive potassium channels, which are present on pancreatic beta cells. This causes restriction of outward flow of potassium ions, and thereby there will be increase in intracellular potassium ions. So the membrane is partially depolarized, causing opening of the calcium channels, leading to increase in intracellular calcium concentration, and this calcium promotes the binding of membrane of insulin granules to the plasma membrane, which leads to insulin release. So this is the figure depicting the mechanism of action of sulfonylureas. So these drugs act on sulfonylurea receptor, which is present in ATP sensitive potassium channels, and thereby there will be blockage of potassium channels and increase in intracellular potassium, causing membrane depolarization and subsequently causing opening of calcium channels and leading to release of intracellular calcium stores. This calcium promotes the fusion of the insulin granule membrane to the plasma membrane, thereby causing insulin release. So coming to pharmacokinetics of the sulfonylureas, these are drugs are well absorbed orally. These all drugs are mostly 90% bound to the plasma proteins, hence these have low volumes of distribution. And these drugs are metabolized by liver, and active or inactive metabolites formed by the metabolism are excreted in urine. So the dose of glibenclamide is 2.5 to 15 mg. These all sulfonylurea, second generation sulfonylurea drugs are used once or twice daily. So among these, glibenclamide have a 2.5 to 15 mg dose. Glipizide is used on 5 to 20 mg dose, and gliclazide 40 to 240 mg dose, and glimepiride 1 to 6 mg dose. Coming to the adverse effects of sulfonylureas, the main most common side effect is hypoglycemia, and sometimes it is most severe and rarely fatal. And it is more this severe and fatal form of hypoglycemia is more common in elderly people and patients with liver and kidney disease. The second most common problem with this sulfonylureas is weight gain. These diabetics initially they tend to gain weight about 1 to 3 kg. And other non-specific side effects include nausea, vomiting, flatulence, diarrhea, constipation, headache, paresthesias. And hypersensitivity reactions like purpura, rashes, photosensitivity can also occur with these drugs. And these drugs should not be used are not indicated in pregnant patients, because safety of these drugs in pregnant patients is not established, and should not be given to nursing mothers, as these drugs are secreted in milk, causing fetal neonatal hypoglycemia. Coming to interactions of these drugs with some of the drugs like salicylates and sulfonamides, these drugs displace the sulfonylureas from its plasma protein binding sites, thereby they increase the free drug concentration in plasma, thereby causing enhancement of these action, and this may lead to hypoglycemia. Similarly, some of the drugs like ketoconazole, warfarin, sulfonamides inhibit the metabolism or excretion of these drugs, thereby they increase the concentration of these drugs in plasma, leading to enhancements of increased pharmacological actions of these drugs, causing hypoglycemia. And some of the drugs like salicylates and propranolol act in similar fashion and causing hypoglycemia. And the drugs that decreases sulfonylurea action and vitiate diabetic control are some of the drugs like phenytoin, rifampin. They induce the metabolism of these drugs, thereby there will be decreased concentration of drug in plasma, leading to therapeutic failure. Other drugs like thiazides, corticosteroids and furosemide can suppress the insulin release, which have opposite actions to sulfonylurea. So the drug effect is decreased when these drugs are used along with sulfonylureas. So next class of drugs are meglitinides. These are also acts like sulfonylureas, which are ATP sensitive potassium channel blockers, like sulfonylureas, which also act on sulfonylurea receptor and on potassium channel, ATP sensitive potassium channel, causing blockade of potassium channel and increasing potassium ions in the intracellularly, causing membrane depolarization and increase in augmentation of calcium channel opening, causing increased calcium ions, thereby which promote the fusion of membrane of insulin granules to the plasma membrane, causing release of insulin secretion. So, like sulfonylureas, these meglitinides increases the insulin secretion from pancreatic beta cells. The drugs which are included in meglitinide group are repaglinide and nataglinide. So these are act similarly to the sulfonylureas. These drugs are have fast onset and short lasting insulin release. So these are mainly used for postprandial hyperglycemia. So when we have to control postprandial hyperglycemia, we have to give these drugs before each meal. So mostly 3 times daily before breakfast, lunch and dinner. And these drugs are quickly absorbed and rapidly metabolized. Unlike sulfonylureas, these drugs have lower risk of serious hypoglycemia because these have shorter duration of action. So these drugs have lower risk of severe hypoglycemia. And this can cause mild headache, dyspepsia, arthralgia, weight gain. And this drug, repaglinide, should be avoided in liver disease. The dose of the repaglinide is 1 to 8 mg in 3 to 4 doses per day. Another drug which included in this group is nataglinide, which is a phenylalanine derivative. It also has a faster onset and short lasting action. And it also have lower risk of hyperglycemia, and it is also used for postprandial hyperglycemia in type 2 diabetes mellitus. And other uncommon side effects include dizziness, nausea, flu-like symptoms and joint pain. The dose of drug is 180 to 480 mg. It should be given 3 to 4 times daily before meals. Coming to third group of drugs which enhances insulin secretion are DPP-4 inhibitor, that is dipeptidyl peptidase 4 inhibitors. The drugs included in this class are gliptins, which are sitagliptin, vildagliptin, saxagliptin, teneligliptin, alogliptin and linagliptin. Coming to the mechanism of action of these drugs, dipeptidyl peptidase 4 inhibitors. In the body there are incretins called GLP-1, that is glucagon like peptide 1. This incretin causes insulin release in response to ingestion of glucose. So actually in the body this GLP-1 action is short lasting, that is they are rapidly degraded by DPP-4 inhibitors, DPP-4 enzyme. So these DPP-4 inhibitors inhibit the enzyme dipeptidyl peptidase 4, thereby increase and prolongs the action of incretins, that is glucagon like peptide 1. So further prolongation of action of GLP-1 leads to increase in insulin release from pancreatic beta cells and decrease in glucagon release from alpha cells. Thereby, these drugs can prolong the action of incretins. So among these drugs, sitagliptin is the first DPP-4 inhibitor. So these drugs boost the postprandial insulin release and decreases the glucagon secretion from alpha cells. Thereby, these drugs lowers fasting blood glucose and HbA1c in type 2 diabetes mellitus. These are mainly used as adjuvant drugs to metformin or sulfonylureas or pioglitazone in type 2 diabetics. Not commonly used as adjuvant drugs, not as monotherapy drugs. And these drugs are well absorbed orally. Only little is metabolized, largely excreted unchanged in urine. So, dose reduction of these drugs is needed in renal impairment patients. Unlike sulfonylureas, these have lower risk of hypoglycemia. This causes hypoglycemia only when these drugs are used along with sulfonylurea or insulin drugs. Other side effects include nausea, loose stools, headache, rashes, and allergic reactions. These most serious side effects are allergic reactions. They can cause angioedema, exfoliative dermatitis, and edema. This drug can also cause nasopharyngitis and cough. These are given once daily in 100 mg dose. So the next drug is in the group DPP-4 inhibitors is vildagliptin. Unlike sitagliptin, vildagliptin binds to the enzyme covalently, so it has more longer duration of action. Although it has a short plasma T-hub, it has long duration of action because it binds to the enzyme covalently, so it dissociates very slowly from the enzyme. And it is metabolized by liver, and only 20 to 25% of the drug is excreted unchanged in urine. But dose reduction is needed in both moderately severe liver and kidney disease patients. So it is also well tolerated like sitagliptin, and it should be contraindicated in hepatotoxicity patients, and it should be given in 50 to 100 mg dose, 1 to 2 doses per day. The next drug is saxagliptin. It also, like vildagliptin, binds covalently with the DPP-4 enzyme, and thereby it causes HbA1c reduction in type 2 diabetes mellitus patients. It is mainly metabolized by CYP3A4. So drug interactions are common with the CYP3A4 inhibitors and inducers like rifampicin. And the dose of saxagliptin is 5 mg. It should be given once daily. And teneligliptin, it is a newer DPP-4 inhibitor, and it has a more longer duration of action, that is more than 24 hours. So only single morning dose is sufficient to suppress the hyperglycemia of all 3 meals of the day, and it is metabolized and excreted by both liver and kidney, and unlike other DPP-4 inhibitors, no dose reduction is needed in patients with renal failure. And although no cardiovascular adverse effects are seen with this drug, but it should be used cautiously in patients prone to QT prolongation. And the dose of the drug is 20 mg, and it can be increased to maximum of 40 mg per day. The next fourth group of drugs, biguanides, which overcome the insulin resistance in type 2 diabetes mellitus patients. Among these we have actually fenformin and metformin. Fenformin was withdrawn from the market because of higher risk of lactic acidosis, and the other metformin which is in the market is biguanide which is in the market is metformin. It is called euglycemic drug because it does not cause hypoglycemia in non-diabetic patients, and even in diabetic patients hypoglycemia is rare. So that's why it is called euglycemic drug, and it also improves lipid profile in type 2 diabetic patients. And mechanism of action of metformin is it activates AMP dependent protein kinase, thereby leading to inhibition of hepatic gluconeogenesis. So hepatic glucose production is decreased and enhances insulin mediated glucose uptake and disposal in skeletal muscle and fat. And it also interferes with mitochondrial respiratory chain, so that it promotes peripheral glucose utilization. So thereby it overcomes the insulin resistance. So coming to pharmacokinetics of metformin, it is well absorbed orally. It is not metabolized. All the drug is excreted unchanged by the kidney. So it accumulates in renal failure patients. So there will be increased risk of lactic acidosis in renal failure patients. So this drug is contraindicated in renal failure patients. And the initial dose of metformin is 500 to 850 mg should be given along with meal. This can be increased weekly up to 500 mg to the maximum of 2500 mg per day. Coming to adverse effects of metformin, these are mainly abdominal pain, anorexia, bloating, nausea, metallic state, mild diarrhea and tiredness. The main advantage of metformin is this does not cause hypoglycemia even in type 2 diabetic patients. Lactic acidosis is rare with this drug, but in renal failure patient there is a higher risk of lactic acidosis. And these drugs inhibits the absorption of vitamin B12 from absorption, so it can lead to vitamin B12 deficiency. And this drug is contraindicated in renal insufficiency patients, and this drug should not be given in hypotensive states, heart failure patients, and in severe respiratory hepatic disease patients, as well as in alcoholics. Coming to the uses, metformin is a first choice drug for all type 2 diabetes patients unless it is contraindicated. What are the advantages of metformin over other drugs? The main advantage is it is not hypoglycemic. It is a euglycemic drug, and it is weight loss promoting. That's why we use this drug in obese patients with type 2 diabetes mellitus. And it prevents the micro as well as microvascular complications of diabetes mellitus. Main problem with hyperglycemia is this leads to Microvascular complications like retinopathy, neuropathy, nephropathy, and microvascular complications like cardiovascular thrombosis, cardiovascular incidents, and cerebrovascular thrombosis. So these all are prevented with this drug, and there will be no acceleration of beta cell failure. And it also reduces HbA1c equivalent to, it has efficacy equivalent to other oral drugs, and it can be combined with any other oral or injectable anti-diabetic, and it can prevent new onset type 2 diabetes mellitus in obese middle aged subjects with impaired glucose tolerance, but not in non-obese older subjects. The limiting feature of metformin is GI intolerance. The other off-label use of metformin is infertility. It is used to improve ovulation and fertility in infertile women with polycystic ovary disease. And the other group of drug which improves the insulin resistant is the thiazolidinediones. We have two drugs in this class. One is pioglitazone and rosiglitazone. Among these two, rosiglitazone was banned in India because of risk of myocardial infarction, CHF, stroke, and death. These drugs are peroxisome proliferator activator receptor gamma agonists, these receptor which is mainly expressed in fat cells, muscle, and other cells, thereby which enhances the transcription of several insulin responsive genes, so that the insulin resistance is reversed by enhancing LUT4 receptor expression on the cells. So these drugs reverses the insulin resistance. Primary action of this drug is to enhance peripheral insulin sensitivity. Hepatic gluconeogenesis is also suppressed, and it is mainly indicated in type 2 diabetes mellitus patients. And these drugs have similar efficacy of other oral agents. It reduces blood glucose levels and HbA1c levels. Apart from blood glucose and HbA1c levels, it also lowers serum triglyceride levels and can also increase HDL levels. These drugs are metabolized by both CYP2C8 and CYP3A4 enzymes. These drugs are well tolerated, and the main adverse effects of these drugs are plasma volume expansion, edema, weight gain, headache, myalgia, and mild anemia. And these drugs can cause hepatic dysfunction, so monitoring of liver function is advised, and congestive heart failure also may be precipitated or worsen. So this pioglitazone is contraindicated in liver disease patients and in CHF patients, and this also should not be given during pregnancy. And and there will be increased risk of fractures with this drug. And pioglitazone dose is 15 to 45 mg given once daily. These are mainly used as a third choice drugs along with metformin and sulfonylureas. The next group of drug, alpha glucosidase inhibitors, which retards the absorption of carbohydrates, mainly glucose. The drugs in the group are acarbose, Miglitol and voglibose. Acarbose is a complex oligosaccharide which reversibly inhibits the alpha glucosidases. This is the final enzyme for the digestion of carbohydrates in the small intestine. So thereby it decreases the digestion and absorption of carbohydrates. And this also promotes the release of GLP-1, that is glucagon like peptide 1 release from the intestine, and postprandial glycemia is also reduced. And the side effects include flatulence, abdominal discomfort, and loose stools. Because of this, patient acceptability of this drug is poor. And other side effects include these drugs can cause elevation of hepatic transaminases. And the dose of this drug is 50 to 100 mg thrice daily to reduce postprandial hyperglycemia. The second drug which belongs to this group is Miglitol. This is a smaller molecule than acarbose. It is a stronger inhibitor of sucrose, and the absorption is substantial and variable. It is excreted mainly by the kidney, and no systemic toxicity is known. The dose is 25 to 100 mg thrice daily. Voglibose has similar properties, use and side effects similar to that of acarbose. The last group of drug in the miscellaneous group we have dopamine D2 receptor agonist, which is bromocriptine. It is approved by US Food and Drug Administration for adjunctive treatment of type 2 diabetes mellitus, and it mainly acts on hypothalamic dopaminergic control of the circadian rhythm of hormonal release, and thereby it is reset to reduce the insulin resistance, and it is marginally improves glycemic controls and lowers the HbA1c levels by up to 0.5%. It is initiated with 0.8 mg once daily dose and can be increased up to 4.8 mg per day. The last group of drug in the oral hypoglycemic agents include sodium glucose cotransport 2 inhibitor. So glucose is reabsorbed in the proximal tubule by SGLT2 transporter. So inhibition of this SGLT2 induces glucosuria and lowers the blood glucose in type 2 diabetes mellitus patients, as well as it also causes weight loss. The drugs in this group are dapagliflozin and canagliflozin. These drugs reduce the HbA1 levels by 0.5 to 1%. And the side effects of these drugs are urinary and genital infections, electrolyte imbalance, ketoacidosis, and increased urinary frequency. And these drugs are contraindicated in patients with renal insufficiency. Coming to other injectables which are used in type 2 diabetes mellitus are glucagon like a peptide 1 receptor agonist and pramlintide. Glucagon receptor peptide receptor 1 agonist, which is also GLP-1 GIP. GLP-1 is a glucagon like peptide 1. GIP is a glucose dependent insulinotropic peptide. These two are endogenous peptides which are also called incretins. Among these two, GLP-1 is most important incretin that is released from the gut in response to ingested glucose. These acts on a GLP-1 receptor which are expressed on pancreatic beta and alpha cells. Thereby, this GLP-1 induces insulin release and it decreases the glucagon release from alpha cells. And this can also slows gastric emptying and suppresses the appetite. The main drawback because it is not suitable for clinical use because it is rapidly degraded by dipeptidyl peptidase 4 enzyme, which is mainly expressed in capillary endothelial cells, kidney, liver, gut, mucosa and immune cells. So that's why we use GLP-1 agonists which are resistant to DPP-4 enzyme. This GLP-1 agonist acts in the similar way like GLP-1, causing increase in insulin secretion from beta cells and inhibiting glucagon secretion from pancreatic alpha cells. So the drugs that included in this group are exenatide, liraglutide, albiglutide and dulaglutide. Exenatide, which is a synthetic DPP-4 resistant analog which activates GLP-1 receptors, thereby increases the insulin release and decreases the glucagon secretion from pancreatic cells. And it is inactive orally, so should be given by subcutaneous injection. The duration of action of this drug is 6 to 10 hours, so it should be injected before breakfast and dinner twice daily. It should be given twice daily, and it is used as add-on drug to metformin or sulfonylurea or a combination of these drugs or pioglitazone in poorly controlled type 2 diabetes mellitus patients. And the main side effects are nausea and vomiting. There is also a risk of acute pancreatitis. The dose of this drug is 5 micrograms initially. That should be given subcutaneously twice daily, and the dose can be increased up to 10 micrograms BD. The next drug in the group is liraglutide, which is longer acting than the exenatide. It has a duration of action more than 24 hours and it should be given subcutaneously once daily. And the most common side effects are nausea and diarrhea and acute pancreatitis also. It can cause, there's a risk of acute pancreatitis. And hypoglycemia is rare with these drugs. Other drugs like albiglutide and dulaglutide are very long acting, so it should be injected once weekly. The next injectable drug is amylin analog. Amylin is also called islet amyloid peptide, which reduces glucagon secretion and delays gastric emptying and retards glucose absorption. The drug in this group is pramlintide, which is a synthetic amylin analog. It is given subcutaneously before meal, so it attenuates the postprandial hyperglycemia. The duration of action of this drug is short, very short, that is 2 to 3 hours, and it can be used in both type 1 and type 2 diabetes mellitus, and it causes hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia is the most important adverse effect. Other adverse effects include loss of appetite, nausea and vomiting. Coming to conclusion, these oral anti-diabetic agents are indicated only in type 2 diabetes mellitus patients, and these are drugs should be used to supplement diabetes management and other lifestyle measures. So metformin is the first choice of drug when the diabetes mellitus is diagnosed, along with dietary and other lifestyle measures. If the diabetes is not controlled with metformin, we should add a second drug. The most commonly selected second drug or second drugs are sulfonylureas. And the third choice of drugs are pioglitazone and DPP-4 inhibitors and other drugs, so SGLT2 inhibitors. These are the newer drugs, so these should be considered for addition to a combination of oral anti-diabetic regimens when the all other first, second, third choice drugs fail to achieve target HbA1c levels. Because these are newer drugs, the safety and their impact on cardiovascular mortality and other outcomes are not yet established. These should be reserved as a third line or fourth line drugs along with other drugs, not as a monotherapy. Next is diabetic on oral hypoglycemics when present with infection, severe trauma, pregnancy and ketoacidosis. We should switch over from oral anti-diabetics to insulin. And 50% diabetics who are on oral drugs ultimately needs insulin. And metformin can be given metformin, sulfonylureas or DPP-4 inhibitors can be used along with insulin in these patients when the diabetes is not controlled. Thank you.